Those of you who might not be as familiar with her, she is a former CEO of PepsiCo in the early 2000s. I read her book many months ago, and what she did and kind of went through at a time where, as you might imagine, in the 80s and the 90s, no women in executive leadership roles. And on top of that, no women of color, right? And so her story of like what she went through and how she got to where she got while staying true to herself, right? At that time in the US, it was very much about assimilation, kind of blending in. And she really stayed true to who she was, even to the extent of like showing up to an interview in a sari, which for those of you who might not be familiar is an Indian traditional dress. So having that kind of confidence and ability to be like, this is me, take it or leave it, is just incredibly inspiring and deep for me to resonate with.
Amazing. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I am Charlotte Mostaed, the Chief Marketing Officer at Health-Ade. You may know our kombucha. We've got the brown bottle with the anchor on it. Pink Lady Apple. It's probably your favorite flavor. Thank you. And then Sunsip by Health-Ade. It's our new prebiotic soda. As I thought about this, she's not quite from history. She's still very much a part of my life. But Oprah is someone that just has been a role model and an absolute icon for so many decades. And I thought about, what do I love so much about her? First of all, she is a badass, an incredible leader, a self-made woman who made an empire in many fields and truly charted her own path, driven by what she knew to be true about herself and what she wanted to do in the world. And I think, as I think about female leadership and what does that really mean, I love how she brings her full vulnerability to the set and to her everyday work and is truly herself. She owns it. She's vulnerable. She's transparent and yet powerful. And so I looked up to her my whole life and still do, as just an icon of how you can lead without having to leave the things behind to try and fit a different mold.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Goldflam. I am the Senior Vice President of Brand Marketing at Veronica Beard, which is a women's lifestyle fashion company. I was thinking a lot about this question because I am in a creative role at a retailer. And for me, we constantly reference the work of Diana Vreeland, who was a former editor-in-chief at Harper's Bazaar and Vogue. She worked at the Met on the Costume Institute. And one of the things that really is just so inspiring to me is that she was a true champion of creativity. And she was always really pushing her team to kind of think outside the box, really just kind of break barriers and challenge the norm. And that's something that I really try to lead with today with my team. And I find that, just something that we constantly need to remind one another, because it's easy to sort of, kind of think about things in what we, sort of know as what today's kind of boundaries are, and breaking those boundaries down.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jenna Berg. I'm the head of marketing for Motel 6, so I oversee all of our brand, content, creative, and media for the brand, all 1,500 locations across the U.S. and Canada. I have to go with Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, especially in a time where I can acknowledge that not everyone in this room feels safe right now. Just remember, fragile like a bomb, not like a flower.
Love that. Love that.
I love that. And I want to get the name of that book and write it down later because it sounded amazing. All right. So it wouldn't be a women's panel without reminding us of the quote from Barbie. So I'm going to read it. Let's see here. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but also have to be looking out for other people. It's exhausting. And I think we can all, everyone related to that dialogue, that monologue in the movie. So I'm going to start with you, Jenna. How have you navigated your personal journey as a women executive, woman leader? And how do you show up in conference rooms? How do you embody your spirit as a woman, but also someone leading a team?
Awesome. Well, I've got my Barbie pink on.
Yes, love it.
Yes, here we go. And I loved what you said, Charlotte, because, it's always about showing up authentically. And y'all, I broke a nail right before I left for this trip. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to get on stage as a woman leader without a perfect manicure? Because all of these people are going to be like, why should we trust her? She can't even keep her nails together. But I'm like, what? Why? It's this, not this, right? And so why does what I have to say be disevaluated by the fact that I have one broken, sad little pinky nail over here? And so just really, that's what I had to stop and remember. And I probably had the time to go get it fixed, but I was exhausted because I was going out of town, right? And I'm trying to make sure the office is covered and the home is covered and my husband is covered and everything is good. And I always have to remember that, I'm a human first and a leader second, and everybody else and all the employees are human first and your team second. And if you can just come there and just remember that everything is not always okay all the time and give people the grace to show up as they can that day. That's the way that I always try to lead, is just remember everybody's a human first.
Yeah, I love that, Jenna. And kind of building on the idea of your nail situation. In my everyday, there is something that, in case someone hasn't noticed, I wear a headscarf, right? It's called a hijab. And in my everyday, that is just an immediate signal that there is something different about me, right? And when I was younger, earlier on in my career, I used to worry about, how is this going to hold me back? How are people going to perceive me that I'm so different? Does she have an accent? Is she smart? All of these things, right? And now it has become such a big part of my identity, who I try to come off as, and I use it as a way with my teams and as a leader to show that there is no reason to be apologetic about anything about you, right? Not the way you look, not the way you dress, not the way you identify, not the way you think. All of us are unique in every single way, and there's a reason and a purpose for each of us. And we are here for that very reason. And there is no reason to be apologetic about that. And so in every way that I, interact with, whether it be peers, leaders, team members, everybody, to your point, Jenna, everybody's a human first. And so being true to that human that you are is what's most important at the end of the day.
I couldn't agree more. I think, I've always operated with the principle that the results and the quality and the content of the thinking is going to be what matters most. And I was just thinking about how this has been a part of me since I was so young. I wanted to play municipal baseball, and the team was all boys, but there was no rule against girls. And I just didn't even perceive it. I just said, I want to do that. I want to do that sport. I want to play. My friends are playing. And I joined the team. And then I was like, I really want to play first base. And I was so lucky that the coach was also my babysitter's husband. And he was like, well, yeah. And he's like, well, let's practice and get you good. And so from that, very first moment of we would practice, play catch all the time. And he told all the boys, throw as hard as you can at her. Do not hold back. And thank God for an advocate like that when I was 8 years old, because that sort of set the tone for how I was going to approach absolutely everything. To now I'm in conversations with my board members who are mostly men, and, trying to convince them of things that I think is going to be good for the business. And I'm not seeing that I'm a woman, you're a man, and I don't compete or I can't be heard here. Now, of course, I have the underdog mentality when I first started, right? So I'm kind of battling that and saying, no, your shit. They actually have never done marketing, and you've been doing this for 15 years, and they could learn a thing or two. They have great ideas. Show up respectfully, but have the conversation with all the things that you know. Do not hold back, and don't let them hold back on you either. So I approach it with my full brain, and just have to kind of get rid of that self-talk that would say you're too young or you don't fit this mold of, the PE guys in the room, and still show up and have those conversations and lead.
That was amazing. Hard act to follow, but I am a mom who works, and a wife and a sister and a friend and all of the things that, America Ferrera talks about in Barbie. And I think that what I've really learned to do is take the 100% capacity that I have and sometimes lean into my personal life when it's necessary, right? So if sometimes I'm really dealing with something with my family or I need to be there for a personal reason, I have to give more like 60 to 70% of myself to that. And then that other 20 to 30% or 40% is really, what I can give to work. And that was sort of, what Jenna was saying too. I think that's okay. And I also feel like I'm much more open about the why behind, I'm not going into my boss's office, like, with tears and, giving my life story. But sometimes I have to be honest because I'd rather be transparent and have whatever I'm working through as something that is, tangible rather than sort of, kind of pretending like there's nothing going on, because again, we are all human. And I think that building those relationships in the office where I spend more time than I do at home is important to me. And it's important to me, again, as a leader who is creating a family at the office.
Yeah. And I think too, like what you said about that is you have to create that safe space as a leader for your team to come to you and have that open places. If they don't feel like they can come have like, I'm so sorry I have a sick kid, or I'm so sorry I need to leave for this, or this is going on. Like if they're a good employee, let them leave. Like they're still going to do their job. They take pride in it, right? And but being have that reputation as a leader that people can be honest with you about what's going on and that transparency, because I would assume that you have a great relationship with your boss, that you feel like you can have that. So. Yeah, you can feel like you have that, right?
But yeah, the last thing, and I know, on that, Jenna, like not only allowing your team to be able to have that freedom, but also like living by that example, right? So what you were saying, like actually doing those things yourselves allows those who work with you or, on the team to be able to like believe that they can do that with the freedom and authority to do that.
And don't let it be a guessing game, right? Literally every single employee that works in my team that we have an onboarding conversation, I make sure to tell them, hey, by the way, I am done at 5. My kids come home. I'm a single mom. You're not going to hear from me then. And you do the same. And it's whether you have kids, a life, whatever it is. And if you ever see an email from me at night, you're not expected to answer at night. It's just me kind of catching up because I've had to do other things during the day. And I don't let it be a mystery because I think that'll stick someone in like a 6 to 9 month limbo as they figure out the company culture. And I want them to know they're safe and they are supported day one.
Yes, I relate to all of that. I'm also a single mom, and I think that, generally women leaders like are A-type people, give it all to their work and like are very passionate about their career and accelerating, but also women still tend to do the lion's share at home. And like my kids are a really big priority too. And I am not shy about making that clear with my boundaries in the office, like certain business trips to HQ. I'm like, well, I'm going on 3 client trips and then also have like kid stuff. So no, sorry. And they respect it because if you kick ass, but show your boundaries, you have more leverage, I think. So I think transparency with dedication to craft is really important.
No is a complete sentence.
All right. I have another quote. There's an anonymous quote that my trade marketing person threw in here. The struggle you're in today is developing the strength you need for tomorrow, which I completely think we can all agree with. We've all, like, you grow more, right, during the hard times than the good times. So how have you navigated a challenge? What have you learned? How has it made you stronger? Let's start with you, Rachel.
So I think where I've had challenges in the past has been, working with different types of personalities, right? I think we've all been there. We've all, had to kind of manage people or work for people that are maybe not the most compatible with ourselves. And I've really, I pride myself on the fact that I really feel like I can work with anyone. And I also really believe that you should never burn a bridge because you don't know who your boss or your colleague will be tomorrow. So, I think what I really try to do is find out sort of why someone may work in the way that they do. Meaning, maybe they've been at the company a long time and they're feeling like there's all this, new blood in the office, or maybe they are just as new as I am and we're, kind of figuring this out ourselves, or, maybe there's something I don't know, a personal something going on beyond the office that, is not something that I should or, might end up knowing about. But like, you have to remember that those things are real. And I really try to take that into account when I'm working with anyone, because I want to create collaboration. And I think that cross-functional work is our best work. So I'm really, I implore everyone to, if someone's not your cup of tea initially, to really work at it, because I find that those are where you get the most rewards.
I've been facing challenges from a few leaders and even from a female leader where marketing is perceived as like really fun and cool. And it's great that you did that cool thing, but I don't know that that's where I would have put the money. And it's like, oh, no, you didn't. And it's okay in a small comment, maybe once. And then the perception I was starting to see from my female boss was that I'm doing things because I like them and they're fun. And I won't say specifics because it was too recent, but, I really, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not being heard. Because I am talking through these things in my one-on-ones. I'm explaining the rationale. I don't know what to do. So, 2 times ago when it happened, I got out an email and wrote the longest email. And I literally said, I apologize for the length, but I seek to be understood. And I would never do anything because it's fun for us to do in marketing. I do things because they are strategic. I do things because it matches with our consumer profile. I do things because it's connected to our core strategic pillar. And I do things because they are cost effective and efficient with our marketing spend. And they're amplifiable to sales, and they're going to bring the buyer there, and they're going to knock their socks off, and we're going to get more distribution to boot. So I never do things because they're fun. And I literally broke down the entire program with money, with dollars and data and all of that. And I didn't have to do that, but I cannot stand that perception. And I think it's a real bias that women in marketing live with all of the time, that we're just kind of having a good time making some cool stuff. And so that's one way I've approached it. And good luck to me on the next one, because it'll.
Yeah. What was the response?
Yeah, exactly. Whew.
I think I didn't hear about that one again. It was like, oh, okay. And then, my annual review was like, well, I really love how you're making the brand modern and cool and relevant, but also you're really strategic and, data led. And so I think I'm training the old dog on the new trick Good work.
I love that. Well, and it's funny because, you're talking about how like women in marketing are perceived as like wanting to do the fun, sexy stuff, right? But also women in general are also perceived as being like too emotional, right? And we can't be logical. One of the things that I actually recently went through, and it sounds like a couple of us here might have gone through it. I'm a single mom now, so recently divorced. And, the journey that I went through and the pain that I went through, women leaders are supposed to, even more so than, a male leader, have your shit together all the time, right? And we're expected to constantly, be up there, be strong, independent, you never break, right? It goes back to the America Ferrera speech or monologue. And I was broken. I was broken for a very long time, and feeling like I constantly had to show up, being strong, not showing that I have a whole bunch of shit going on in my personal life that is tearing me apart, was really difficult. And I finally got to the point where I gave myself the grace to say, you know what, it's okay, because I am human. If these people don't want to realize that I'm human, then that's their problem. This is me. And the important people in my life are the ones who are going to see me, going to want to hear my story, be there for me. And that's what's most important, right? And if it's going to get in the way of my job because people think I'm being emotional because I'm going through something in life, then I'm sorry, I don't want to work for you or with you, right? So yeah, just giving yourself that grace that whether you're a woman or not, or whatever you are, right? Like we all have shit that we go through in our lives every day outside of work. And if it's tough, that's okay. And it's okay to be human. It's okay to freaking cry in the office. I did that a couple times. It's fine. But yeah, at the end of the day, like we just got to be there for each other, you know?
But not too strong.
That's
because
right. That's right.
I got fired for steamrolling people with opinions, my opinions.
That's right.
Right? So getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me, though. So, you know, it was not the right role for me. It was not the right piece. And the problem was, like, I kept getting this feedback of you're steamrolling people with your opinions and you're too strong of a woman. You're too aggressive and assertive and, dare I say, bitchy. Right? I mean, I'm a really nice person, guys. And I just want to be friends with everybody. Like, I don't understand this feedback. Like,
She really is.
like,
Yes.
and I'm like, I'm a very collaborative person. I do not understand this feedback, and no one could explain it to me. And what I realized is that I'm just a verbal processor, and I have to think out loud. And we get all this feedback as women of we have to like be more assertive in the boardroom, and I'm like, I need to be less, right? And that's okay, because I think what I finally realized, and I didn't know how to not be myself and be perceived as my authentic leader. And then when I wasn't authentic, people knew there was something off. And it disconnected me even more from them. And I was like, I don't understand how to fit this mold you've told me I have to be in and still be who I am. And like, finally, what I realized is that every human in this room is a multifaceted person. And there are so many different tools in your toolbox. And leadership is one of mine. Assertiveness is one of mine. But so is empathy. So is connection. So is these different types of things. And I can be in a room and understand if I need to be that leader, aggressive, take over the boardroom, or hey, this is a space where I need that empathy and that connection and that peace. And I'm not fundamentally changing who I am as a person. I'm just utilizing the tools at my disposal in a different way to be more successful in that room.
You guys are inspiring me left and right. I'm like dying inside. And I just want to add a couple things that I think both remind me of like what you said and Jenny, what you said, because when I started Zynga, where I've been now 12 years, I was actually pregnant when I got hired, and then I had my mat leave, and I got separated when my child was an infant, and I had dinner with my boss, like while I was on mat leave, and I was deeply ashamed to be getting a divorce with an infant. I had like so much shame, and I came out to her, and she was just like, Gab, I love you, and like I think you're amazing because of who you are, not because you're married. My boss gave me the confidence to be like, you know what? Yeah, I have like a 2-month-old and I'm getting divorced. Like, woohoo! You know, it was just, but it was also about she gave me the power to be who I was, but also I was deeply struggling too, you know, and it's not easy to be going through things, but it is important to be authentic and to work in a place that allows you to exist, because we all have a life and we're all still professionals, and you can't stop life from happening while you're working. So next question, ladies, paying it forward. When we were talking for our prep call, I think you mentioned maybe mentorship versus sponsorship, but how do you pay it forward? How do you, like, for the next generation or older generations or whatever in between? Charlotte, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, I had an interesting experience. I joined a company, so excited to join. It was the biggest paycheck. It was a big raise from where I was before. It was amazing. And I thought, great. And then I made good friends with the chief head of HR, and she was kind of on her way out. And thank goodness, another, guardian angel mentor, she's like, do you realize how underpaid you are versus the men at your level? I said, of course I don't. And she said, you are. And she's like, just think about it. And all of that. And I went back to, well, hey, when your recruiter was negotiating salary with me, she was lowballing me and making me sound like what I was asking for was so much, fully knowing they had a way bigger budget for this role. And so I was like, man, that kind of feels not good, because I still work with that person now, years later. I went back and renegotiated and got off cycle and got a way bigger paycheck. And luckily I was threatening them with other recruiting things happening, and I didn't have another offer in the bag, but I was in conversations, and it was great. They did not push on that, and it was wonderful. But B, I took that message forward and I said, I'm not going to lowball rock star women that come into my team. I'm not going to sit there and pinch over certain amounts when I know they're worth it. And so I'm always going to be a compensation advocate for the best people on my team. And they may not realize that, but if I have pre-advocated for it, I will. My direct report got a bigger raise than I did this year. And I was so happy to do that for her.
On my end, I have gotten every single one of my roles throughout my career from my network. A friend of a friend, someone I met at something like this, and I truly believe in paying it forward in that space. I either correspond or meet with anyone who reaches out to me when, I get those sort of, blind emails on LinkedIn, or someone asks me, do you mind connecting with this person or passing their resume along? I think that's so important. And I think there's so much, good that can come out of just helping someone make an introduction. It may not lead to something then, but it could lead to something in the future. And I really felt fulfilled. And it was funny because I ran into someone not that long ago, a young woman who was friends with my younger sister. And she said, oh my God, I always think of you. I remember when you sent my resume to wherever I sent it. And I worked there for my entire career. And I don't even remember doing it. But I was so just taken aback at how probably small at the time it was just to share her resume with someone, and it made such a big impact. So I was really proud of that. And I think paying it forward in that space and helping, sort of the next gen in their professional careers is really important.
I have a hot take on this one. So I think there's a very big difference between having a sponsor and a mentor. So a mentor is somebody that you can go to and ask their opinion, and they will give you no holds barred feedback, right? And they are outside your network. They're outside the situation. They are just a sounding board for you to go bounce things off of. And that's super important to have. And if you don't have one, you should get one, and you should be one for somebody else. But you also need sponsors, right? You need people to advocate for you in the rooms that you are not in. So those are your cheerleaders. They're not your mentors. They're your cheerleaders. They're the ones who are going to talk you up in the room, in the boardroom. And all the senior leaders in here, you need to be sponsors for people on your team. Talk them up. Give them the credit. You already made it. You're an executive. You're a senior leader. You made it. Help the other people get there too.
Yeah, so true. And the one thing that I'll say, on my end, that I try to do from a mentorship perspective, because you're right, 100% very different, mentor versus a sponsor. But from a mentorship perspective, it goes back to this idea of being human, right? The three things that I always remind myself to do: I gotta listen, I gotta be empathetic, and then I gotta be vulnerable, right? In order to connect with people, vulnerability is really where you get connection with people. And that's when people can feel safe. People can feel like they can be themselves and really have confidence in the fact that you are there for their best interest and not with some sort of hidden agenda or anything like that. From a sponsor perspective, I'm with you, Jenna. It's very interesting, and I know it can be controversial, but you really also got to be a little thoughtful in who you pick as your sponsor, because unfortunately, where things are today, some people, even though they want to be your sponsor, unfortunately, their voice is not as meaningful as others, especially as we know in the boardroom. So trying to make sure that you're making those right connections with folks that you know can have meaningful influence, especially as a woman, I think is incredibly important.
I know I'm moderating, but I'm going to chime in. In terms of mentorship, something that, like I hit the 50-year-old age range, and it always kind of bothers me why there's no 50 over 50 list, or why there's only 30 under, like why are we so obsessed with youth? Because I'm in my wisdom era, and it makes me very sad that people at a certain age, especially in advertising, or gaming technology, are like shown the door, and I just don't get it. So like I've made a very big priority to hire like 50 plus women on my team, and I just really hope that everyone here, because when you're young, sometimes there's this, there was even a funny skit on SNL last night I caught about like making fun of 50-year-old people that wear red rimmed glasses. You guys all have to see it. It was with Lady Gaga. And it was so funny, but it kind of like reminded me how like young people think old people are lame, but like every generation is beautiful no matter where it is. And by the way, my mom, it's her birthday today. She's 87, which is insane. So, and she looks like Jane Fonda. So, all right. I think we're at our last question. So this is a round robin. And, even though we're all women celebrating Women's History Month up here, we care about men too. At least I do. I'm sure you guys do too. It's okay to admit it. What gender neutral advice, right? Because it's not only women here. What gender neutral advice can you guys give? And Lina, let's start with you.
Sure. Mine's short and sweet. First, be human. Be yourself. And secondly, then be humane, right? Be understanding of others. Be empathetic. That's it. Be human. Be humane.
Yeah. I think, the benefit of the doubt is so strong, right? And when we're working, we work really remotely and we're having these quick meetings, things can get transactional. You can start to see doubt. I think internally, you need to have those personal conversations when you're not understanding something fully. And you can give others the benefit of the doubt and respect that what they're saying, even if you disagree with it, talking about conflict earlier, give them the benefit of the doubt that it's coming from somewhere. And so seek to understand before you kind of make that snap judgment. And I say that to everyone as much as I say it to myself, because we're working so quickly. You take those shortcuts when sometimes you really need to slow down and consider.
Mine's a build on that. Do you care if I go next?
I don't.
Oh, okay, thanks. So be transparent too, because I think for me, what I realized when that steamrolling story, right, was just verbal processing and thinking out loud. So when I need to do that, I understand who's in the room and I'm like, hold on team, time out. We got to verbal process here. And then I promise I will sum this up at the end. So you have actionable feedback, or time out. We're going on a little ADHD side quest real quick. We'll come back to the main point, right? And you just kind of give people context for what's happening and they don't fill in the blanks with their own pieces. And the last sort of piece I'll add on this, because I like stories and because that's how I relate to people. My core value as a human is belonging. And so when I text my husband and he's like, oh, I'm going to happy hour. And I'm like, do you want me to come? And I'm like, please tell me you want me to come, right? Because I want you to want me to want to be there, right? But his core value is freedom. And so he would never tell me that I had to show up. He'd give me the option, right? He'd say, I don't care if you come. And to me, I was internalizing that as, well, he doesn't want me there because of my value, and how I would assess that is because I want, he doesn't want me to be there. If he wanted me to be there, he'd tell me. But his core value is freedom and independence. And so he's giving, in his mind, he's being more kind by giving me the option. And so I think we try to fill in blanks we don't understand with our own value set, and not everybody thinks that way. So be transparent about why you're making decisions. Let's build on exactly what Charlotte said. But if you're unsure of somebody's motives, just ask them.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yes, and for those of you who were at the women's brunch earlier, this will sound very familiar, but it's something I was taught about, I don't know, maybe 18 months ago, and it has really stuck with me. Sometimes it's better to be interested versus being interesting. And I think that that's really important, right? You should listen. You should understand and ask questions and really try to, get the full picture of something, rather than, sometimes it's I'm a people pleaser. So you want to talk about yourself and you want to, try to get someone to like you and, make yourself sort of a part of the conversation in that way. And actually, I think if you flip the script a little bit and you're really kind of poking the bear and asking good questions, that's just as interesting to the person who you're trying to be interested in. So I really live by that, and it's really stuck with me.
Amazing. BI team, where's my MC? Are we doing questions? No questions. Okay. So I think we're
Come talk to us, though.
then.
We're around. You can ask.
Thank you.